All right, well, we have a lot to cover here, so why don't we go ahead and get started? I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you all here for during Cybersecurity Awareness Month to discuss this very important topic of incident response. I'm Andrea. I'm the Director of Marketing at Proper Sky. Before we get started, I just want to give a huge thanks to our co-hosts, partners, and friends at Blackpoint and TechRug for their participation in today's webinar. Just a quick reminder, I just want to let everybody know here that today's session will be recorded. So if you could please keep your audio muted and cameras turned off during the session until the Q&A, that would be great. At this time or at any time, feel free to add your questions, comments in the chat, which can be found up in the top right corner of your screen. And we'll be sure to circle back to those at the end and address all questions. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to today's panelists to introduce themselves and get started.
All right. Hey, I'm Jim Smith, founder and CEO of Proper Sky. We do IT the proper way. We're a managed IT services provider. And in the context of this, we typically help organizations from the ground up. So we're usually the boots on the ground that are helping with a restore and or prevention of any incident. Then we have Nevan. Nevan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nevan Beal. I am a principal MDR analyst here at Blackpoint. Blackpoint, we are a security shop, so we're focusing on identifying and handling sort of attacker methodology, attacker TTPs within our clients' networks and sort of containing it in a quick fashion.
Thanks, Nevan. And then Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jim, it's Justin Rymuth. I'm with TechRug. It stands for Technology Risk Underwriting Group. We are actually a cover holder in Lloyd's of London, so kind of think of it as like our own insurance company. We work with just over 3,000 cyber clients on not only insurance, but risk management and risk transfer techniques.
Excellent. Yep. And Justin and Nevan are joining us today because we use their services and they're experts in their field and very well versed and knowledgeable when it comes to IT and cyber. All right. So today's agenda, we'll try to be quick here. So what breaches really cost businesses? So there's both the actual costs, which we have some data, which is easy to collect. You can collect that from insurance claims. There's also some hidden costs that we're going to discuss, how and why attacks happen. Common and emerging entry points, more of a technical analysis of some of the more common ways that adversaries are getting into networks these days. Justin's going to help provide us some real world case studies. And then we're going to talk about just some general best practices to responding to an incident, as well as some tips when you're shopping your cyber insurance to make sure that you're getting the value and delivering sort of, collecting what you're covering what you should be covering. As well as some practical security tips and some best practices for how to harden up your environment and reduce your risk and overall footprint. All right, so without further ado, let's kind of jump in. So as we were kind of alluding to a little bit, if you guys were earlier on the call, NetDiligence is an aggregator of data. They collect different numbers from different insurance organizations, and they sort of aggregate that and they figure out what the claim amounts were. So as of 2025, the average cost per sector it was about $264,000 for each cybersecurity incident. As you can see, that while varies quite widely. Professional services, which is the majority of the organizations that have cyber insurance, roughly on average. Manufacturing, $400,000. Retail, a little bit less, which makes sense. That probably less risk there. And then also healthcare, quite a high number there, $566,000, probably related to insurance premiums and some other things, fines and levies, as well as financial services, which is $329,000. So this, as you can see, like while there is an average, the average per sector can vary quite dramatically between sectors. 98% of all the claims that are represented in this study come from small, medium-sized enterprises with less than $2 billion in annual revenue. So we're probably more likely on the micro side of these transactions, but still, just to put it in context, these attacks happen to small businesses. The other thing that's important to know is 41% of these claims occurred between 22 and 24, and 58% were due to email compromise between 22 and 24. All right, variation by incident type. Not all cybersecurity events are created equal. So there are different levels and types of cybersecurity events. So one of the things that's pretty interesting here is you can obviously see the 900-pound gorilla. Ransomware by far is a much more expensive event that occurs, and there's lots of reasons for that. One, there's forensic negotiation. There's negotiators, forensics, ransomware, business interruption insurance. There's a lot more damage that gets done as part of the ransomware part of this. Business email compromise, the average claim is roughly $100,000. And then wire transfer fraud, which often is an indirect result of business email compromise, $171,000. So the theft of money, that's usually internal theft of money. That's fraud or some sort of event related to a vendor or third party, 38,000. But as you can see, there's quite a dramatic difference. In 2024, there were over 50 ransoms paid greater than $10 million alone as part of this. And then the last piece here is sort of, not the last piece, but attack likelihood. So one of the things that I find interesting is people are like, oh, so what? Everybody gets attacked, or it doesn't really matter. 27% of small to medium-sized enterprises were hit by ransomware in the last 12 months. This really blew me away. This actually came from a study from a firm called Hiscox. They did 6,000 organizations across 7 countries: United States, Ireland, United Kingdom, France, Canada. And they found that 27% of all businesses had at least one particular type of ransomware attack. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire organization was ransomed or that a claim was filed, but it does mean that some sort of attack occurred, and it happened. And they also note that 59% of small to medium enterprises have experienced a cyber attack of one of those 5 types within the last year. Cyber attacks could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, so we kind of focused on ransomware because of the outsized impact that it can have on an organization here. And then the last piece here is sort of the rise of ransomware. Threat actors realize that this is the most lucrative way to sort of generate income, and so they focus on this as a particular attack methodology. And 44% of all business breaches reviewed by Verizon for small business involve ransomware at some type. That's up 32% year over year between 23 and 24. And this comes from the Verizon DBIR, Data Breach Investigations Report, which is sort of like the creme de la creme of cybersecurity data. So those are the hard physical costs that we typically see involved. There are also hidden costs that you typically don't see as part of the cyber event. And this is one of the things that, we've got some practical experience with this. A lot of times insurance companies aren't going to cover the equipment, right? The first thing that you want to do is, okay, your server just got blown away. Do you really want to spend $10,000 of labor recovering a 15-year-old server that may or may not still be infected with some sort of ransomware? And the answer is always no. Generally speaking, if a router is compromised or some of this equipment is compromised, it's usually bricked and nobody really trusts it. There's going to be some hardware recovery costs that are part of this. Regulatory fines and legal fees. There are some regulatory fines and fees that are included in some of this ransomware in the outset. One of the things that we've seen, actually, particularly in regards to medical data being leaked, is that there'll be secondary and ancillary lawsuits that are not covered by the breach or the cybersecurity insurance. For instance, if you lost, let's say, 20,000 medical records as part of the cybersecurity incident, there's a good likelihood that there could potentially be a class action lawsuit, and this lawsuit and fees would fall outside of the scope of this. So there's a very high risk that this could potentially impact your medical records. Reputational damage. This goes for employees. This goes for staff, vendors, partners, the people that are inside the organization. A lot of times, personally identifiable information will leak from HR systems, social security numbers, raises, payment information. A lot of personal information comes out of this that kind of damages your reputation as an employer in this space. And then, of course, customer churn, right? So once it gets highlighted that this has happened, there's a high likelihood that you're going to lose customers as a result of this. And then, I think this one is probably the most profound, but the least visited, is sort of the emotional trauma. There's a link here to the Oxford American Journal of Cybersecurity, where they interview sort of like different owners, and they talk about the emotional impact of what this feels like. And, it's quite something to have to sit down next to a business owner that's been working on something for 25 years to see everything at a complete standstill, and then wondering how the heck they're going to be able to make payroll or how they're going to be able to run their business in the next few days. It's really pretty difficult. And then there's some downtime, which you may or may not have as part of your business interruption insurance. So I'm going to pass this off to Nevan. He can talk more about the threats and risks that we're seeing these days.
Awesome. So when thinking inside the mind of a hacker, So cybercrime is no longer really a hobby; it's more of an organized network. So for these ransomware groups Jim was talking about, everyone serves a different purpose. You have people developing the ransomware. You have threat actors that are focusing within that same ransomware group, focusing on breaching the network. Others working on spreading the ransomware throughout the network. They're all working together as a team, and that all these different types of teams have different types of sort of objectives in the long run. For example, like nation states are in it for the long run. They're looking for certain countries are looking for like financial data or research data, things of that nature. Others are looking for the destruction of critical infrastructure. We also have things like profit-driven scammers. So everyone's sort of seen those like fake Microsoft login pages, fake tech support. Those typically can lead to things such as like dropping remote management tools onto a host that can lead to sort of the wire fraud if they're sort of interjecting, accessing email or trying to wire money out as well. Sort of the flexible career path aspect of things, it's not always going to be a very complex hack. A lot of times it's sort of the threat actor following the principle of KISS, keep it stupid simple. So spraying and praying a sort of a exposed SSL VPN appliance, or spraying and praying exposed RDP. A lot of times these are people doing it in their free time as well. It's not someone that's working full time. For example, well, we go to nation state operatives, it may be someone that's doing it for a full-time job for the specific nation state. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of people that could just be, when you see them out in the street, it's a normal person. In their free time, they're the ones focusing on, hey, this is sort of a interesting aspect of cybercrime we can go down to, trying to work on sort of working towards their action on objectives, focusing on getting to that specific end goal of theirs in the need. And that comes along with sort of the curiosity and thrill of it. So understanding the curiosity question of, okay, if I know how to do this, how far can I get, as well as sort of bragging rights and reputation. So again, they work in teams. Typically, there's always someone in a chat room. There's job boards, things of that nature. So working together to reach that specific end goal, even if it is different threat actors attacking different companies, organizations, things of that nature, they're always all talking to each other in some shape or form at the end of the day. And that along is coming with the bragging rights of like, hey, I did XYZ, you did XYZ, sort of trying to one up each other in these cyber breaches. So how did they get in? So a common VPN, so the two sort of case studies I have are SSL VPNs and RDP or RD web exposure. Within the Blackpoint SOC, we see a lot of SSL VPN breaches. Again, these are not always a strict vulnerability in the VPN device. A lot of times it is a threat actor getting the credentials of a legitimate user, or sort of brute forcing the credentials of a user to log into the VPN. So once they get into that VPN, they log in with the credentials, they have access into the internal network. These sort of, the SSL VPN and RDP, RD web, they are leveraged for legitimate remote access by end users. However, at the end of the day, if a threat actor can get in, it also provides a threat actor remote access as well. So sort of the analogy I like to make is think of it as like a gate to your backyard. So if you can open the gate, you can get in as well, but that gate still stands there. So if you don't have a lock on the gate, an attacker can get in as well. Once they pop the SSL VPN, they typically attempt to move laterally throughout the network. So going after the crown jewel servers. So think of like your file share servers, your hypervisor servers, or the servers that run the virtual machines that may run like your web applications, things of that nature. Domain controllers are what I like to call the brain of the network. So they're controlling and sort of making sure everything's operating in tow. They'll start executing enumeration and reconnaissance commands. They may add additional users for sort of persistence in the network. A lot of times threat actors are dropping RMM or remote management tools such as like AnyDesk or Screen Connect. Here at Blackpoint, we have Managed Application Control, which is our product that can flag these unauthorized applications being dropped and sort of notify the SOC saying, hey, there may be something bigger going on. Because at the end of the day, our product is built to focus on sort of the mindset of the attacker. So answering the questions who, what, when, where, why, how. So sort of painting that bigger picture of, okay, Mac may have flagged a rogue RMM tool in the network, but how did that tool get there? Why is that tool running? So sort of painting the bigger picture of what's going on in the network. So one alert may just be one alert, but again, in the bigger picture of things, it can be the indicator of a full-on network breach. And at the end of the day, again, the action on objectives always depends on the threat actor. So whether it's exfiltration, ransomware, things of that nature, Managed Application Control also has detections for common exfiltration tools for threat actors trying to get data out of the network.
Cool. All right.
This is somewhat similar. This one is remote desktop. So same category of things. RD web is a common brute forcing, I'd say, component of threat actors. So if they see like, hey, there's a RD web portal login that users log in to remotely access their desktops in the internal network, they will typically spray and pray it commonly. I've worked, I think, 2 or 3 breaches this week already spawning from the compromise of RD web. Long story short, it's sort of the same kill chain where it's like, hey, threat actor brute forces it. They get into the network, they get dropped onto, typically it's like a remote desktop server. They then ask the question, okay, where am I? So they run commands on the server itself to look, okay, what user account am I on? Where am I in the network? What permissions do I have to sort of work towards that end goal of theirs, whether it's exfiltration, ransomware, things of that nature. But again, it's working on that sort of repeat cycle kill chain where once the threat actor gains access to the internal network, whether it be via a SSL VPN or sort of the RD web application that they compromise with either user credentials or some sort of exploit, they then work that cycle of, okay, understanding where they are and working towards getting the privileges needed to reach those action on objectives.
That's great, man. All right, so we had a good question here regarding AI. I think we're going to save this to the end. I think there's a much larger discussion. I think, Nevan, I think having you weigh in and Justin, you weigh in on what you're saying as well might make a lot of sense. So thanks for the explanation, Nevan. This is great. All right, Justin, you want to take it?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I appreciate everyone being on the call today. I guess I go forward, right, Jim? Do you have me on there?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, sorry about that. So this is an example. I mean, listen, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of a slide, but I just want to kind of tie in, the importance of cyber liability insurance and something that Jim said earlier. They're definitely, I mean, I've been through hundreds and hundreds of claims, and there is definitely a financial, aspect and toll to this. But I think Jim brought up a real good point, was the emotional distress. There are actually exclusions in there for PTSD and an insurance policy for PTSD type consultation. So it tells you that this is real, or else the carriers wouldn't have put in. And I've been on claims where clients afterwards have had to go on like maybe a Klonopin or a Xanax. I had one that had to do kind of this Knight Rider type therapy. So we're in just a different world. I know a lot of people, and maybe some people aren't, this isn't true on this call, but they think, oh, I'm either in a certain industry or I'm in a certain size and I'm not a target. And it's just not true. I mean, these attackers, I mean, if it was an attack on Verizon or something like that, then yeah, it's probably targeted. But for the rest of you guys, they're looking for vulnerabilities because, you're not keeping up with, certain security protocol, which is why you have Jim and his team. And then when they get through, if you don't have the proper cyber insurance, they really got you. So, I think that this approach that we're going to talk about today is twofold. The first is, the preventative side of it, right? I mean, we all go to the dentist and get our teeth cleaned because we don't want to get a root canal, right? Or we go to checkups to make sure that we don't have a heart attack. And that's kind of what Jim and his team do. But then if something does happen, then you want to make sure that you've got the right, resources, because if a claim, especially like on a ransomware attack, when one domino falls and you need to get, Bitcoin or whatever to pay the bad actors, 5 others fall behind it, and we'll address some of the coverages, but it could be business interruption. It could be hiring, the right attorneys, having breach costs and things like that. So, I know we've gotten some technical, and a lot of you guys probably aren't technical. When you heard, Nevan speak, he did a fantastic job. But, I'm addressing it when, the blank hits the fan, and so, I just wanted to kind of, summarize that before I got into this claim. But this was just a CPA firm that we had, recently. I'm not sure the size of the clients on this call, but this happened to be a 55 and employee CPA firm, and obviously during tax season, it's a very stressful time. Maybe the employees aren't paying attention, lack of sleep. Just doing a lot of things, March time, spring, you got baseball games coming up and lacrosse, so they might have other things on their mind. Somebody clicked on a link they shouldn't have. And about 9 out of 10 claims that we see are not technology errors, they're user errors. So that's big. I mean, I know Jim's probably going to talk about training, but in this, slide, we talk about the importance of security training, awareness training. I mean, if there's one thing you can take away from that, I mean, it's critical, right? I mean, you have to bring the knowledge up because, once you're getting here, I employ a certified ethical hacker that's hacked over 100,000 machines. And he's telling me, I mean, they're always changing the way they're trying to do things. So, somebody brought AI. I mean, we just had somebody that fell for an AI deep fake. So the game's getting raised. So, please keep up on your security awareness training. This event, when they got in, they were able to, encrypt some stuff. And basically what encryption is they put you in jail, they take the key and they take it outside and they say, how are you going to get out of the jail cell? And so usually there's only one key to unlock it. And that unfortunately is with the bad actors. So this particular event, it was about 500,000, and again that would incorporate paying the bad guys as well as business interruption claims, computer hardware replacement. You need to make sure that you might have to, especially with the CPA firm, notify people that their information might have been compromised, and you have to provide credit monitoring. So just a lot of moving targets.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So, after the event, right? One of the things that I think a lot of people don't really realize or don't really have a plan for is like what happens next, right? So, Justin, I mean, what advice do you have for organizations like after an event has occurred in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, if you got insurance, you have to remember an insurance policy. Everyone go on Wikipedia and look it up. It's a contract. It's a contract between you and the insurance carrier. So, the first thing is if you were to get with, again, we're going to use Jim. If you get with, Jim and you guys find out that there is an unauthorized user in the environment. Jim is an authorized user with his clients because he has a contract that says I can get in the network and do A, B, and C. If you have someone that doesn't have that, that meets the definition of a claim. And at that point, there are reporting provisions that you must follow. One of the catastrophic things that people do is when an event like that takes place, they think, oh, nothing really happened and I'm not going to turn it in. If you wait past 60 days with these carriers or you go through a renewal and then something comes about on the 90th day and you didn't tell them, your coverage is going to be denied. So at that point, even if you guys find out that you don't think anything had happened, please, please, please turn in a notice of circumstance. What a notice of circumstance is, hey, I'm aware that something took place. You're not going to be penalized. I want to get this on file. If anything ever comes about, please don't tell me that I didn't tell you. So a lot of people ignore that. And then they run into exclusions and say, hey, because they find out, I mean, a lot of times I think, Nevan and his team can tell you, if you have someone in the system, you might not find out for months and months and months and months. There's a business email compromise. They're very sophisticated and very good. So please notify your insurance carrier. Don't give up your right to turn in that claim and turn in a notice of circumstance. They will not penalize you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I think the other thing too, Justin, is like for a lot of organizations that we actually make cybersecurity mandatory as part of our contracts just because it's just worth it, right? And so I think one of the first things is, oh my God, something happened. You call your IT person, and honestly, you should really call your insurance company first.
Yeah, and I don't think it's bad, Jim, just to let notify you. But everyone out there, Jim's hands are kind of tied, right? I mean, if your house burns down, Jim can't come build it. If you're in a car accident, he can't repair your car. If you need him to approve a medical claim and get an x-ray, Jim can't do that for you. So again, you need permission from the insurance company for Jim to do things, because Jim runs into a situation where if he does something and he shouldn't have and the carrier comes back, he could deny your coverage. He could walk into a subrogation issue where the carrier says, hey, you should have notified us and this would have been a $15,000 claim, but because of your actions, it'd be $100,000. It is $100,000. Guess where they're going to go for the additional $85,000? To Jim's door, So
right.
Again, if people don't think cyber insurance is important, I always say, Nevan probably knows people. I know people, have somebody hack your system and go down for a day. Do it on a Monday morning, and from 8 to 5, try to perform your business functions. You just can't do it,
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't think you need, the proper protection and the cyber, security that Jim offers, and then you don't need a cyber insurance policy, I mean, it's like buying a $2 million house, not carrying insurance. Good luck if things go wrong.
Really, man. Yeah, and I think one of the things, Justin, that a lot of people don't realize is that it's really a crime scene after this stuff happens, right? And so, Nevan, you could probably say this too. So once your devices are hacked, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm instantly going to start recovering, and we're just going to start working right away." The reality is, you can't. There might be. The FBI might have a key, or they might be looking for a nation state threat actor. This might be a novel hack that, the FBI is interested in. This could be, whatever. And so, a lot of times you're kind of hamstrung, and we're hamstrung because once the insurance carrier is notified, we're kind of on notice in terms of what we can and can't accomplish. And so it's really important that, you do some forensics work and that you really, consider this as part of like the cost of what's going to happen when an event does occur. Yep. And then sort of managing the crisis, right? One of the things that we've seen a lot of business owners, I guess the best way to explain this is it's the forced payment of technical debt in many ways too, because a lot of times the organizations that we see that end up getting, ransomed or hacked, and not all, but many of them, they're just very loosey goosey with security and never really took this seriously. And they end up having older hardware and software that they didn't upgrade and laptops and stuff like that just, shouldn't have really been in use. And because of that, the widespread, blast radius, I guess, from this attack really kind of spreads out. And so like you really need to have a plan in terms of, okay, what is the critical stuff that I need to recover? What are the applications that I really need to get working? Who gets priority, and then you really need to have like a non-technical plan and really kind of come up with a quarterback, how we're going to strategy, how we're strategically going to recover from this event while you're waiting for this forensic data to sort of come back up. All right. And then, I think, our thing, Justin, I'm sure you'll agree, and Nevan as well, ounce prevention, pound of cure, right? So having the right toolkits in place really is part of the secret sauce to reducing your risk. And it's can be significant. So Justin, you want to maybe speak to like what are some of the gotchas or things we need to consider in cyber?
Yeah, I mean, I think rule number one, don't fill out your own application. Get with Jim and his team. The carrier sometimes can use some vague language. Do you have multi-factor? You might think it might be on your email and remote access. They might say that we took that as a router and a switch. I mean, multi-factor can apply to many different things. So I think rule number one is we see a lot of clients sometimes if they were to get to not denied. Again, stories that I hear, again, TechRug's different that we're our own insurance company. Knock on wood, we're 18 months without denying a claim. But, I see where, they overstep their boundaries. There's misrepresentation into the carrier. So, I'd make sure that, you're getting with your technical team or your managed service provider, to make sure that you guys are answering those questions correctly. The other thing I see a lot is, again, I take out insurance, agent E&O. I have an offering from, my professional liability carrier to add cyber. I could add it to my business insurance and I don't. Why? It's not comprehensive enough. I think, if you have to do very little underwriting, I mean, again, we're going to use my house example. If you go to buy a $2 million home and they ask you 3 questions, it's probably not a good sign. I mean, most of the people that buy $2 million homes have to go through some pretty detailed underwriting. So I think that's, usually a lot of these business insurance carriers and professional liability carriers, again, not all of them, but a majority of them, they ask you only a few things because it only covers a few things that go wrong. And there is nothing more frustrating than when I hear a client talk that, for the $150 additional that they spent, they thought that they were getting, the whole pie and not 1/10 of the pie. So their expectation is, oh, cyber covers everything. No, cyber doesn't cover everything. So I would encourage you to buy a comprehensive standalone cyber insurance policy and do not rely on your business insurance and your professional liability insurance. One other thing that, we see a lot of times, with the carriers and, certain exclusions is, kind of the BYOD, bring your own device. Sometimes you're making a representation that these things are, when it comes to these things, I should say security, that they're in place. And then someone brings in a device that doesn't adhere to that security. So again, you're representing to the carrier by filling out an application that you're doing certain things. So, be careful with those BYODs. They are a very, a good way for the bad guys to get in the network and really cause some damage.
Thanks for that. All right, we got just about 3 or 4 minutes left of the slides. So we'll kind of skip through a couple of these and then we'll focus on the questions. We got some good questions in here. So it's interesting. Justin provided a list and we actually have our own list as well. And so it was almost a 1-to-1 correlation in terms of what the recommendations are for sort of best cybersecurity practices. And Nevan, I'm sure you can relay or lay in on this as well. But one of the things that we've actually just made mandatory is around the clock security operations center or SOC monitoring. We're seeing a huge uptick. Almost all the events happen on the weekends, after hours, and late at night when nobody's working. And the other thing that we're seing too is basically accessing and penetrating Microsoft Office 365 tenants, particularly for business email compromise and for some generic hack stuff. The other thing that we recommend is protection for all endpoints, email filtering. MFA. Microsoft has a study. I think implementing MFA reduces risk by 99.4%. I think the second you turn it on or something like that. I forget what that was. And then we just have just different pieces here. Nevan talked about VPN and remote desktop services. It is critical that multi-factor authentication be turned on for those services, in addition to just regular passwords. I can't tell you how many times we see on LinkedIn or from a Blackpoint post about organizations that just had, simple, easy to guess password, and they were able to log into the network that way, and they stayed there for months. Another thing we didn't talk about, but it's very good to have, is zero trust. That's basically just assuming that nothing is safe and then adding in layers as you know that they're safe, as well as mobile device management, which is to Justin's point. So if you have a bring your own device policy, you need to be able to wipe those devices or secure them or have some sort of way to control them. And there's some ways that you could do that with both policy as well as enforcement. And then security awareness training, which is a big one, right? Knowing what to click, when to click, especially with AI. I think this is a big risk, right? Deep fakes are very real and very convincing. I've actually received a couple at this point now that really blew me away. And then, of course, backup and disaster recovery, being able to make sure that you can get your data back. Super important stuff here. All right. I'm going to skip this one, Nevan. I hope you don't mind. So let's see here. Having an incident response plan. We talked about this, and let's get back here. So as part of this, we have kind of the cost of a breach versus proactive protection. We got a little calculator so you can figure out what the cost is. Of just ballpark how much it would cost for licensing, how much an event could potentially cost you, depending on what your coverages are and some other things. So there's another question here. So I'm gonna kind of jump right here to the questions. And please, guys, this is great. I love getting questions. It's much more engaging. So let's kind of go through these. The first question we have here is, if we implement all these security features, will it reduce our security premium? Justin, you want to speak to that?
I mean, I think that a couple of years ago, the answer would have been yes. Now, we're seeing if you want a comprehensive, well-written cyber policy, you either do it or you don't. And when I say you don't get it. So, one other thing, I mean, a lot of times when you guys are up in your security, again, these are all great things. When an IT service provider, your managed service provider makes recommendations, just like a doctor's following the AMA guidelines or an accountant's following the AICPA guidelines, or me have to comply with the Department of Insurance, they have to apply to, comply with standards too, or else they violate their errors and omissions insurance. So don't look at it as an upsell. They're not upselling. I mean, a doctor isn't upselling chemotherapy on a cancer patient. So, make sure that, that you're following the security. And if you do, again, you should get a relatively inexpensive, well-rounded cyber liability or a cyber liability insurance policy.
That's great. All right. And then thanks for that. Next question. Nevan, you might know this better than I would. How long does it realistically take to recover operations after a ransomware event? Or you see a lot of these. So what would you say?
It depends on the organization. It depends on, again, as you said, backups, things of that nature. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be it could be longer than a month or two. It really depends on the factors of okay, what was hit, how hard were they hit, things of that nature. So it plays into basically the scope of what happened, I guess, and also sort of how ready the organization is, how ready they are to file claims, how ready they are with backups, things of that nature to recover from these breaches. Depending on if you're prepared to have all your ducks in a row, it could take a couple of days, maybe a week, if not longer. But if you're not sort of prepared for the worst case scenario, it could take a very, very long time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we've seen the gamut. It really depends on how much data and damage gets done as well. Sometimes we'll walk in and they may have only gotten to one or two servers, or they may have gotten to every piece of equipment that you've had, and it was a very coordinated attack, right? So all that really makes a difference as well. This is a good question. So, is it still best practice to not pay the ransom? I'm curious to see what you guys think. Just what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. I'm not encouraging bad behavior by any means, but every claim we see, usually it's these larger municipalities. I mean, they're spending 8 and 10x. So I'm glad that they do it. But unfortunately, just from a cost standpoint and a time standpoint, it's better to pay the ransom. But again, I am not encouraging bad behavior at all.
Interesting. Nevan, what's your experience, man?
Yeah, I'd say from a security practice, it's not the best case because again, you pay the ransom, they may try and extort you for the data. So you send them the money, whether it's in Bitcoin or crypto, they come back saying we want more money for your data to be released, kind of thing of that nature. So there is a double extortion aspect of it. The other thing is when you pay the ransom, it shows them that you're going to be paying ransoms. So they may come back and try and hit you again in the future, which is also always something to keep in mind. So typically, I would say it's not best practice to pay the ransom. I understand the aspect of there's a lot of moving parts to that, but again, it can lead to double extortion. It can lead to the threat actor targeting the future, things of that nature.
Yeah. So I have a different perspective. From a business owner perspective, I think there are cases where it makes sense to actually absolutely pay the ransom, particularly if you're trying to reduce your, I guess, PR. Right, you're trying to get ahead of bad PR. You don't necessarily want this to leak out, or you've managed to contain it to a certain point, and the cost of the ransom is minuscule compared to the potential loss of clients and data theft. I mean, that's a real conversation that CEOs have had with I in the past. I think the other thing is once you do it, to Nevan's point, there is a target on your back forever, right? So you will always be an organization that's, because they know that you pay that. You pay the ransom, you're absolutely positively going to be the heat's going to be turned up on the stove, I guess, over time, because they know that they can get money out of you. So there's definitely a trade-off there, but there are cases, or maybe it's the only copy of data that you have left, right? Maybe they managed to pull some sort of critical piece of data, encrypted everything else, and you really need a copy of your QuickBooks from, because it's the last piece you have. So I don't encourage it either. We try to make sure that we have good backups that are recoverable and tell them to go pound sand. But, a lot of times we're brought into incidents that we weren't necessarily managing and we have to recover. And a lot of times these are real conversations that need to be had. So
I think one other thing, sometimes, again, you might be forced into it. I mean, we're seeing a trend, and it's happened over the last 6 to 12 months, where technology is great. I mean, Nevans and the gyms of the world do their job, but they have your data. And so if it's a law firm or a high profile client, they'll start leaking it to your clients and they'll force you to pay the ransom. Yep. So I've been on that where, they did hit one of our clients, and, it happened to be an IT service provider, and they were able to gain access to, 4 high profile clients. And again, we just had no choice.
Yeah. Yep. It's tough. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. So the next question, this is an interesting one. How are you seeing AI impact cyber attacks? And on the flip side, how does AI support prevention? Nevan, I'll go to you first. I'm
yeah, that's a Nevan question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think AI lowers the barrier of entry for cybercrime. So a lot of times, like back in the day, you had to spend a lot of time understanding how these systems work, how to basically break these systems to get into networks. Nowadays, you can use like a local LLM, so like ChatGPT, you name whatever AI platform, to sort of understand how to do these type of attacks. A lot of times they will gatekeep some of that information, but when there's a will, there is always a way, is how I sort of like to phrase it. It's a lot easier to get the information you need to understand how to sort of propagate cybercrime and how to do these attacks on the internet nowadays. I think that just is more being sort of quickened up and become more efficient with the introduction of AI. For the prevention of it, it also is helping it as well. It's understanding the knowledge of like, okay, we see this happening in our network. Is this good or bad? AI is not perfect, but it can actually help teach you the principles of like, okay, this is what bad looks like and this is what good looks like. And also leveraging this tool to sort of automate out a lot of the noise in your network to focus on the sort of specific true positives and the sort of bad, the inherently bad that comes into the network. So whether it's like BECs or sort of bigger breaches that go on as well. So it's a tool that can work both ways. I think it will always lower the entry to cybercrime, but it can also be used as a very, very beneficial prevention tool, sort of to uptake skill and knowledge on the defender side of things.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think from the endpoint detection and response tool, a lot of these EDR tools use correlation and behavioral analytics. And as AI gets better, it gets better and better at noticing stuff that's good and stuff that's bad, and sort of isolating it and highlighting the things that could potentially be bad. So I do think there's a positive on that side. On the negative side, the ease at which you can spoof very convincing audio and video, and as well as craft emails that almost look like they are from an organization is pretty spectacular these days. And we're just in the early stages. I think this is going to get increasingly sophisticated as time goes on. And I think we're going to see more and more people social engineering attacks as time goes on, for sure. All right, then we had two other questions here. So first question was, is it common for bad actors to take over your email account? Absolutely. So that's actually one of the things that they really try to do, because a lot of times the multi-factor codes and passcodes and access to recovery information is in those systems, which makes has a big impact on things. I don't know, Nevan, Justin, anything to weigh in on that?
Yeah, again, I'll leave it to Nevan. That's more of a technical question.
Absolutely. So email accounts, business email accounts are always sort of a good vector for entry. A lot of times, one of the biggest sort of sources of infections, breaches, things of that nature is always going to be email. So you have things like phishing emails. You have threat actors sending phishing emails that have malware attached to them. So when you try and open the file, say you're trying to view a financial statement document, it actually drops a piece of malware on your PC or host. So a lot of times they are targeting the email account and sort of the email vector to begin with, just because of the nature of how easy it is to send data if you don't have proper filtering. But it's always, again, a simple business email compromise can also lead to a much greater breach in the cloud and then also on-prem, depending on how things are set up network-wise.
All right, so Travis, to answer your question, Dropbox and OneDrive cloud storage, it's definitely better to keep your data there because there are tools usually built in to recover from ransomware. But we only have a minute left, so I want to hop to the last slide, just kind of do a summary here real quick. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Really appreciate it. Key takeaways, we can kind of skip this. I think the big thing that's good to share with you guys, Justin and his team are offering a free vulnerability assessment for all of the attendees that are on the webinar. The other thing that we're going to do too is there are 3 reports that we use to aggregate this data. There's some executive summaries, I think, that are very useful for anybody that wants to review this data. This isn't pie in the sky stuff. This is really good data and really helps you build some meaningful information. And then the other piece is we actually put a little spreadsheet together. You can input your own tools and costs and really kind of do a break-even analysis to understand like how much your cybersecurity tools can cost. And we have this built and structured in a way for nonprofits and for-profits. And it uses some of the data that Justin gave us, some of the tools that we use with Nevan and his team, and I think it'd be helpful for everybody to have that as well. So appreciate that. And of course, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Justin, Nevan, or myself. We're available via LinkedIn, or you can email Andrea. She'll provide our email addresses and make sure that you guys can connect with us. And I think that's it. Guys, Justin, Nevan, Thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Thanks for everyone attending.
Thank you.